I'm Ryan Grove. This is my wife, Tiffany Grove, and we've been having the most colorful conversation about the flat Earth. And so this is our third installment. Um, let's jump into it as usual. What I would like to talk about is Antarctica. I think that's a huge reason why I think that the Earth might possibly be flat. And let's start with like you know, because of the British Navy, the British was an empire around the world, and the sun never set on the British Empire. And it was because of their Navy. They had the best Navy in the world. And because it didn't look like our Navy, doesn't mean that the men utilizing it were inferior to us. So if they were able to achieve what they were able to with that sort of primitive technology, the men that use that primitive technology to actually achieve that, I mean, they have to be appreciated and their accomplishments. So you have guys like Captain Cook and Captain, oh gosh, I can't even think of their names.
Marlboro.
Um, that's a cigarette, and that is the name of the general that defeated Louis XIV's army, Duke of Marlborough. But those are the only Marlboro references that I can come up with off the cuff.
What I thought he was a
No, we're talking Navy baby. We're talking
okay.
Navy. Yo, hey.
So no, Marlboro wasn't a Navy man.
No. So, having taken that into consideration, there have been several expeditions that had set out by great men doing great things with primitive technology by today's standards, and they set out to map the circumference, the coast of Antarctica. And if you ever heard or you've ever paid attention to like tales and stories of like sailors and pirates and all that stuff, there's always this connotation given to the term the South Seas that's negative, because so much superstition, so much weird stuff has happened in the South Seas throughout history. And what I think that stems from is the fact that it from the 15, 16, 17, 1800s, even the 1900s, sailors, if you use the map of the globe in the northern hemisphere, it's perfectly accurate. See, so there's no problem with either model when it comes to navigating the seas in the northern hemisphere. Once you cross the equator and you go into the southern hemisphere, then you either have to make it a globe, or you have to let it be the plane that it is. And so sailors have always had trouble in mystifying experiences of reckoning their latitude and longitude with any accuracy. And some of the best sailors in the world wrote in their like ship logs or whatever that they're off by like 12 to 18 miles every day. And so many ships have been wrecked and been lost, not just like in fog, but like in broad daylight, according to some ship logs that have been preserved. I think that discongruent understanding of the nature of the southern hemisphere between sailors and global Earth philosophers has created this terrible problem that has messed people's perception up.
It's actually because they probably did not understand the Coriolis effect and some of the other aspects.
You know what? Navigation. I'm talking a long time, but I'm going to complete a thought. And it's interesting you say that, but I'm not going to say anything about that now, just for the sake of time. And I'm going to finish the next part, and then I'll just totally surrender the floor to you and let you come back. And so then, as far as Antarctica itself is concerned, the British Navy, was dispatched to Antarctica to map it out. And there was a captain, man, I cannot think of his name, but whatever. If you look it up, you can find probably who I'm
you can
inferring
look it up
to.
And tell us next time.
Right, sure. So this one captain had an expedition. He was going to map the coastline of Antarctica. It was supposed to take about 8-9 months. So him and his ships set out, And they started mapping and mapping and mapping and mapping. And not only did he experience the same incongruencies with latitude and longitude that others throughout history have reported, he, after almost 2 years of mapping the coastline of Antarctica, he had to give up because he had been exhausted of supplies, of his logistical situation was pretty poor. So he just gave up and sailed back. And he claimed that he had mapped over 55,000 miles of coastline. So this is not a madman. This is not a conspiracy theorist. This is not a lunatic. This stuff has been recorded and preserved, and presumably you can research it. However, I haven't looked at the actual document myself. So once again, I'm relying on a belief system. I just wanted to make that clear. But there's discrepancies like those, and those aren't the only instances that I find very perplexing, because the circumference of the world at the equator is only supposed to be roughly 25,000 miles. And so furthermore, if you go back to Admiral Byrd going on a TV show sponsored by that terribly named watch company or whatever, like in 58 or whatever, he says he found a landmass the size of the USA in Antarctica. I mean, how can that possibly be, given the dimensions that we're to understand about the size of Antarctica? This is crazy stuff. All right, I'm going to stop now, and it is totally your turn.
Okay, so first I would want to maybe go through what is the difference between the kind of faith. Sometimes you make a reference to, well, my faith, I take it on faith, or the system of beliefs or whatever. So I did want to do just a tiny differentiation on, like, what's the difference between belief and faith. So in science, theory means a well-substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world based on a body of facts that have been repeatedly confirmed through observation and experiment. So that is a little different, where you can have like tangible results and repeatability. And so I wanted to differentiate, like when you say that you're just taking it on faith, no, I'm taking it on the body of facts
that you faithfully understand to be correct, as indicated to you through books and other media.
And in school, we have to do practicum
transfer information to you that you gauge
so in
as
school,
being true or not.
We had to do experiments to confirm.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah. So, and then another point I wanted to address is, you had mentioned that, we're just believing some of these facts. And I do think that that's what's wrong with our education system, is that it is dumbed down to the degree. I think a lot of it happened, around the Reagan administration era, where we got rights for disabled folks so that they would be in an all-inclusive classroom. Because we didn't want to discriminate by just keeping them in their own
like
classes.
Special ed versus regular classes?
Yeah, so we tried we wanted them fully immersed into their cohort, their group, their age, as much as possible. And we didn't want to isolate them in just an individual classroom. So I think some of the dumbing down of education comes in there, because we started getting a lot of teachers' standards where funding relied on test results, and tests had to be geared for passability because they wouldn't get the funding. And a lot of that, they knew that if they wanted everyone to pass and they didn't have the resources, that they would have to dumb down the curriculum to some degree.
Right.
So it's not just a conspiracy about the dumbing down of education. There's like a lot of practical reasons why education is dumbed down.
What?
But if Charlotte Iserbyt is,
how does that pertain to the Earth being flat?
I know you talked a long time and said
I was just curious
for a minute,
because if I don't have the context or don't see where you're going, I'm going to miss out on what you're saying. That's all.
So
So I'm sorry.
if Charlotte Iserbyt is to believe, it's almost conspiratorial because they prefer that we be more cog-like so that we can fit into our modern industrial age as cogs in the machinery, the industrial age and the conveyor belt and
The hive
mass
mind
production.
philosophy
Sure.
of society.
So, I mean, but it doesn't even have to extend that far. It can just be simply underfunding experiments with education. Like we kind of have a nice classical model, but people are always trying to be a part of the cult of the new and find something that works better because instead of addressing the core in discrepancies in education, they think, well, maybe we just need to do it different. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things interfering with education. Um,
So how do you think that pertains to the flat Earth, though?
so I'm saying that I think,
And I
unfortunately,
agree with you, by the way.
people that
I'm
believe
following
maybe
you.
in something that's a conspiratorial science idea really don't understand how the world works because of their poor education.
I bet people
And
are
so,
accusing us of that right now as they
yeah,
watch this, by the way.
sure.
But anyway, go on.
But their poor education. So yeah, that's what makes me so inarticulate that I need all these notes.
You're doing
I
a
mean,
good job.
some of this I
No, you're
should
good.
actually just know because I've made it through college and I majored in science, but I still have to have notes. It's not necessarily because it's so complex and it's a lie. In my opinion, it's because education is so lax. I mean, it's just so dumbed down. And
It is.
for example, we take like Thanksgiving and we try to affiliate it with like the Pilgrims, which weren't ever really called Pilgrims at that time. They didn't really dress the way that we have them in black frocks with the white collar. Um, the settlers did not really land at Plymouth Rock. Just stuff like that. We didn't eat turkey.
Well, that's kind of like what I was saying before, is that history is a lie.
Right.
It's a lie.
So that's what I was going to
So I'm glad that we're meeting on that common ground.
I wanted to come in and meet you on that common ground to say that I actually think the opposite of you, but I think.
What you talking about, Willis?
I mean, I believe in the globe Earth, but I think that it's because I just happen to have a little bit better education than you did in the field of science, and I think that it's unfortunate that we educate our kids so poorly that they can't even have this discourse off the top of their head. Like, sure, it should be obvious to somebody like me that the Earth is a globe, but how difficult is it to prove it that now we have this whole group of individuals who are thinking that it could be true, but it's just because, in my opinion, we don't give a good science education to kids at all, and we just bore them to death, and also science has this kind of elitist attitude amongst the upper echelon of scientists where they feel that people are beneath them, so they can't even talk to them about scientific ideas. But actually, I think it's the job of a good scientist and a good human on a global planet to be out there having the dialogues and because what do they tell you in school? No question is stupid, but then we get all these polemics.
But you're giving a lot of weight and credibility that you're implying is evident to the education system. What if the education criteria is flawed and wrong?
Well,
so I mean, how good is it actually to have a great education when it's built in faulty paradigms, faulty context, manipulation, indoctrination? I mean, maybe
aspects of the flat Earth
just putting that out there to consider.
The phenomena that we experience in the world, you couldn't experience it if it was a flat Earth. And I'm just saying that.
But I could say that to you.
It's very difficult to explain because you and
I are coming from the same non-experiential perspective and just listening to what people say, and it's just who you believe versus who I believe.
Let me just finish one last point about the education thing, and then you make a point.
That. No, I'm making my point now, and I'm done.
You stopped at me a little bit or laughed a little earlier.
Well, I apologize. I thought it was just a quirky conversation.
Yeah, it was. But I'm just saying, yeah, that's fine. But I'm just saying, you laughed a little when I said
You
that.
laughed a lot at me. You laughed a lot on the
I know.
last episode. Just
No,
putting
I
that
know.
out there. All right,
Yeah,
go on.
that the North Star is in an exact fixed
Oh yeah, the
position
galactic
relative to the pole,
poles and all that stuff. Yeah,
the celestial poles.
celestial poles.
But
Yeah.
um, and then when I threw in the fact that we do have to allow for the Earth's precession and other factors, and you said, of course we do, but that's because education is like an onion skin or a rabbit hole. I mean, it just gets deeper and deeper. You think
Layer
you know
after
how
layer.
something works. They tell you,
I
oh,
agree
your
with
brain
that.
works on the sodium
You're right about that.
potassium pump. So you just think of these little machines firing sodium and potassium in your brain to make electrical sparks, but that's not how
And
it
thankfully,
works.
once in a while, a little dopamine.
Because if you then you have to get to the molecular level of like energy transfer and what's actually happening.
Oh, like Coulomb
So
and the charged particle behavior.
you think that something can happen, but it can't if you understood the physics behind it. Why you think
you had
happen.
well, you know, I guess
that now you make your point. That's fine.
Sometimes arguments come up in conversation, and I think that to pretend like an argument can't possibly manifest itself, it would be a betrayal to the sincerity and earnest nature that I value in conversation. So I'm going to allow the argument to go. So, oh, you know, I talked about it so much that I totally forgot the initial point. So what was the?
I counted on that. No,
all right.
I'm just kidding.
All right. So I guess we're done now.
Go on with your next point, though.
No. I think
I just wanted to talk about education.
You said stuff that is absolutely worth contemplating, and I think now that you've forced me into contemplating what you said mode, that we should stop and we'll come back again. And don't count on us for being eloquent in any way or efficient or anything, but you can count on us for being us and having a conversation. So we're gonna have part 4 here soon.